Hello friends, it's Simone. I am sharing my August pens and ink review today, and I am going to do this in a slightly different format. I had several pens inked in August, and I was also going to the San Francisco Pen Show. I am preparing for 30 inks 30 days, and because I know myself, I need to be prepared and pre-film quite a few videos to get me started. Otherwise, I'm just going to be stressed, and I really want to enjoy that experience. So I did not really get to use many of the pens that I didn't get to use my pens as often as I had wanted to. So there's that. If you didn't watch the videos that I shared about August pens and inks previously, I will link them in the description box below. That's where I talk to you about why I chose some of the inks, why I chose some of the pens, some of the struggles that I experienced and encountered right away. I am using my fountain pens mostly for journaling, and I am using a Tomoe River 52 GSM notebook. This time, or since June, I have been using this 013 insert from the Travelers Company with 128 pages. And I'm really enjoying that. I have found that this paper works really well for me. That's where I write with my fountain pens. I also use my fountain pens on for letter writing mostly. So that's the two areas where I use my fountain pens most. And there I use various different kinds of papers, so I don't necessarily experience each and every fountain pen on all the papers, but there's always a variety there. With that being said, let's look at the pens I had inked. This is the lineup that I had for August. It is 10 pens, and as you can see, there's only 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 pens here. That is because I sold one of them already. Yes. So I am going to go in the order that I have put them in here. But just to recap, I had the Lamy All-Star Petrol in broad, inked with Robert Oster Cafe Crema. I had the Pilot E95S inked with Robert Oster African Gold and White Lightning. I had previously inked this pen in July without White Lightning. Then I had inked the TWSBI Mini AL Grape with a broad nib with Color Traveler Sanuki Udon Dashi Gold, the Franklin Christoph Model 2 with a medium nib with Troublemaker España Boulevard, the Esterbrook Esti. I had thought of carrying over the Diamine Hellspells that was in there in July, but what I didn't realize was that this had been written dry already when I talked about it. So I took this opportunity to put a new nib in there that I shared in a video in August and put Sailor Manyo Nadeshiko inside. Then I had the Bennu Euphoria Gold Coast, the Atlas exclusive, with a medium nib inked with Journalize, Starry Night, Dark Matter, the Confetti Milkshake Euphoria, medium nib inked with Kobe in collaboration with Lamy, Light Rose, the Pilot Vanishing Point Yellow with a medium nib filled with Pilot Iroshizuku Yamabudo, and then the Watts model from Walltown Pens with a fine nib filled with Pilot Iroshizuku Kosumoso. I had also inked the Travelers Company brass pen with a fine nib with Varingul Metamorphosis. I've since sold this pen. So I am using this Hobonichi A6. It's an old one. I'm trying out how this would feel as an ink journal. And yes, I have so many ink notebooks. This is what I call my ink jotter, where every time I journal, I put in, first of all, I document also what comes in and what goes out. But I also, every time I journal, which is this week was very successful, I journaled every day. I write the name of the ink, the pen, the nib size, the ink, and then how I felt about this pen and ink combination on the other side. And I really enjoy doing that. It does not always reflect all of the impressions of the pens because I also use them for letter writing and I'm not documenting that in here. But it's fun, it's easy. And then in the back pages, I put down thoughts, ink swatches, tests. I do some stats here, keeping track of in and outgoing things. That's the ink jotter. This I would probably more call a yearly journal, fountain pen related journal, where I'm thinking of adding in, when I purchase a new pen, I have this scrappy notebook here where I put like testing the ink. I would love to do this on these pages. I am also trying to document each pen that I ink up with a pen with an ink for the month and see how I like it. When I talk about to you in my currently inked, I tell you my first impressions of the combination, and I would love to have that written down somewhere. And then when I come back for the review, I also tell you something and how that went, and that is going to be here. And so at the end of the year, I have a whole document where my fountain pen journey for the year is documented, kind of. So I had this idea. I pulled out an old Hobonichi and started trying this, and I really love it. So planning on doing this in 2024. But that was a total tangent. Let's start. I have filmed clips of me writing this. I will insert them right here and just read to you what I wrote. My first impression of this Pilot E95S Burgundy with a medium nib and Robert Oster African Gold was that I did not enjoy this. I carried this over from July. It was super dry. I didn't like it. I have since learned that African Gold is super dry for many people. And it was so bad, in my opinion, that I actually decided to sell the pen. Now, there's another story that's coming. I also purchased White Lightning, a solution that you can use to make your inks wetter from Vaness in July. And so in August, I flushed out this cartridge and added White Lightning and the ink in here and tried it. However, I have no experience. This was the first time trying this, and I was I just used way too much White Lightning. And so it went from being too dry and not an enjoyable experience to extremely, extremely wet. So wet, and so the White Lightning changed the ink so dramatically that it looked so different. And as you can see, it even bled through. So, of course, the White Lightning changes the ink. It feels like it's drying differently as well. Look at the line width. Okay, so there is a blob on the nib, and that happened too right here, there was always some kind of ink sitting here drying. Does that have to do with the White Lightning? It's too thick now and the ink is different. It connects to the paper all differently. I don't think White Lightning will be the solution for me, especially if I'm using too much. So I also went to the San Francisco Pen Show this past weekend that I'm filming this. You will see this a little bit later as usual. And I had a nib appointment with Kirk Spear from Pen Realm, and I told him my struggles with this nib, and he made it wet, and it was already smooth, but it was super dry in the upstrokes, so dry that it would basically stop writing, and that was just not nice. So he fixed that for me, and now I'm totally keeping this pen. So that was a great experience after all. Experience in the sense of that I am now really happy with this pen. Then I had also a carryover, the Pilot Vanishing Point Yellow with a medium nib, Pilot Iroshizuku Yamabudo. This was not used very often this past month. I really like having a magenta in this yellow pen. I liked the overall combination. This ink is definitely not a magenta that I would choose first. I want to try and see other magentas in this pen and see if I like the writing experience as much as I liked this one. Why I'm hesitating to say that this was perfect is because of the sheen and the overpowering sheen when it's super wet, which this combination is. So I just wrote, not really sure what else to say. I loved the pen and the ink combo. I have no intention of selling the pen anytime soon. I'm really happy. This was the last test basically for me to decide, do I really like this writing experience or do I want to like the writing experience more than I do? So this also stays. The TWSBI Mini AL Grape with a broad nib was a carryover as well. It is now finished. You saw this was the very first time that the pen did not write. So the conclusion with this ink and pen combination is that I really liked that the pen wrote well every time I used it. There is no shimmer present in the writing. However, and you can see this here so well, the spotty shading affects the legibility of the ink. I love how this ink goes down and how it dries. It's not the same shade, it's not the same color. It's super fascinating, it's lovely to use, but that is something that makes me hesitant to use this more often. I also thought about selling this pen. There were many pens on this table that I thought about selling, and I actually also already contacted the potential buyer. And when it was time to send her the invoice, I just couldn't get myself to sell it. So I decided to keep it. Even if it's not the most perfect pen for me, I still love it so much that I want to keep it. The Franklin Christoph Model 2 with a medium nib. I bashed this on this pen, or I shat on this pen every time I filmed a video that included this pen in the last 2 months. And if you saw my San Francisco Pen Show video, then you know that I actually purchased another model of this. Another color variation of this. So something about this pen just speaks to me. And so I am willing to accept the fact that the cap doesn't seal well. as you can see here, this is how different it is when I don't write with it too often. Even though the cap doesn't seal super well, I still like this pen and decided to keep it. It never dried out and wrote nicely, so I'm happy. And one of the things that I realized throughout this month, most of these pens sat more than they were written with. There is only, and interestingly enough, it's the Benoist, where the ink, and the TWSBI, where the ink didn't get darker over time while sitting and waiting to be written with. And so this is not just a Franklin Christoph issue. This is not just an issue that this specific pen has. This is an issue that all of my pens have. And so I will just have to accept and learn to live with it. And so that's what I'm doing. Yeah, it was inked with Troublemaker España Boulevard, and it is now empty. I am going to clean out all of the pens except for this and this one. But all the other ones will be emptied and used or not used in 30 days. The next one was the Walltown Pens Watts model in the Sebastian Blank from Turn to Penco. I call this lovingly my sparkly unicorn poop. I'm currently reading The Keeper of Lost Cities, and there is an alicorn who poops glitter re-poop, which is really cool. Maybe I need to call this alicorn poop. It's a middle grade novel, by the way, series of 9 books, and I'm really into it. I really like it. It's a nice world that the author is painting there. So I had this pen inked with Pilot Iroshizuku Kosumoso. The nib is a fine nib. I loved it in the beginning, and I'm still loving it after having it inked for the month. I really enjoy the weight. I enjoy the feel of the pen. The pen is super comfortable in my hand. I loved the ink color more than I thought I would. I would totally buy a bottle of this ink. I'm not sure if the seller did something to the nib because it feels extra smooth and extra wet. I know that the ink is supposed to be more lubricated or wetter than others. So maybe that's the reason. I will find that out when I put a different ink in here. But yeah, overall, great experience. This one, I think I talked about in my currently inked for August. This was empty before I even got to film the currently inked video. Then I had the Benno Euphoria Confetti Milkshake with a medium nib inked with Kobe Lamy collaboration Light Rose. My first impressions were good. However, I have not used this pen enough to make an informed decision or judgment on either the pen or the ink. I was not drawn to this at all. And I don't know if it's... I talked about my troubles with this pen previously, and I don't know if this is the reason, the design of the pen is the reason that I wasn't drawn to it, or the ink color, which also doesn't really pull me in. So I wrote, I have not used this pen enough to make an informed judgment. I'm not sure if it's a combination of the pen, if it's a combination of pen and ink, or the pen or the ink that I'm not drawn to. I definitely can say if I had to choose between Kosumoso and Light Rose, I would always pick Kosumoso over Light Rose. And if I had to pick between the Confetti Milkshake and the Gold Coast, I would also always gravitate toward this. So this was a loser overall. And I still need to figure out why it lost. Was it the ink color that didn't pull me in? Was it the design of the pen that didn't pull me in? Not sure. I definitely can say that I'm not, I seem to not like these candy pinks. And yeah, I thought I would. I love that there is this blue undertone here, but it's just not making me excited as this does. This has something that this doesn't have. And so, yeah, not for me. This, however, I think was the winner, Benno Euphoria Gold Coast, which is an Atlas exclusive. I saw my friend Jana's Gold Coast, and hers has much more of this gold at the bottom. It looks stunning as well. But yeah, every pen here is different. This has a medium nib. It was inked with Journalize, Starry Night Dark Matter. It was a winner on all fronts. It was a lovely, saturated, legible ink. The shimmer did not do anything to disturb the writing experience. There is shimmer legible. I don't know if I can show it to you right here. It's not everywhere, but it's there, here, here, here. So even if I write for a little bit, there's still shimmer in the ink, and that is just so cool. I really struggle with shimmer inks, repeating myself all the time in all of my videos. So having such a pleasant experience with a shimmer ink was lovely. My friend Amy, who is the owner of this ink and gave me a sample, had a different experience with this ink. So I'm not sure if I was just an exception and it didn't dry for her. It smeared all the time, and you can see up here, this is where it's very concentrated, and I think this will smear. I didn't have this experience with the writing, even though this is a very wet nib. But yeah, for me, this time around, it was a great experience overall. This was by far my favorite pen and ink combo of the month. Every time I used it, I loved the ink, I loved the pen, and the wetness and smoothness of the nib and ink. I can't say enough good things about it. That's exactly how I felt. Then Robert Oster Coffee Crema. This pen, as you can see, it dried out because it's empty. So I re-dipped it to write this. The ink evaporated. So as I said, the Franklin Christoph is not the only pen that has this issue in the climate that I'm living in right now. So I will just have to deal with it. I will just have to re-evaluate my approach and maybe do it differently. But I loved this. I loved the broad nib so much. I really like the color of the ink. It doesn't matter if it's light or dark. All of this is just so great. I would totally buy a bottle of this ink. This pen dried out too, and when not written for a while, the ink color is much darker, as you can see right here. I loved the broad nib. I enjoy using Lami's again, and I just need to change my approach to the amount of pens I have inked, or write more. So that's the conclusion for this pen. I don't have this with me anymore. The Travelers Company brass pen with a fine nib, I had inked it with Wearingeul Metamorphosis. I did not enjoy this at all. Not necessarily the ink color. I did not enjoy the narrow grip section. My hand started to cramp when I was writing this small amount of writing. And so I knew that it wasn't for me. I listed it and I sold it, and I'm happy that it's not here anymore. I don't even miss it at all. So what I write, I'm not sure I like this at all. No, I know I don't like this. The pen is just too narrow in the grip section and my hand starts cramping even when writing this. I'm not sure I can even judge the ink with this pen. Oh well, again, what learned. Decided to sell the pen on August 13th, 2023. Okay, last in this review is the Esterbrook ST in sea glass, and I removed my medium nib and put on this new journaler nib that I purchased secondhand from the virtual pen show on Instagram. I will link their handle down below. I have purchased 2 items from them so far, this pen and the nib, and it's not from them. They're just the platform that sellers can use, so it might not be the same experience for everyone. It depends on the seller and you need to do your research. I had 2 pleasant experiences, which was really nice. I inked this up, and I actually have a video on this. Didn't I say that before? So if you are interested in seeing how I try this out, I will link it up there. The Esterbrook SD Sea Glass with the journaler nib, and I inked it with Sailor Manu Nadeshiko. And the minute I tried the ink, writing with this pen, I knew immediately that I would be disappointed by the ink. I had expected something completely different from the swatch. Here you can see it's much brighter blue than it is in the writing, and I would have loved this ink to be that way. It wasn't. I think if I want to experience this color, maybe I should go towards Pilot Iroshizuku Ajizai or some of those colors in that close, something like that. This ink wasn't that. So my writing experience was different. What I noticed too is now that I have written with this, after this was the first writing, this was the second, it looks different. And I think that I actually, even though this has these super sealing caps, it's not as tight as I thought it was, because there is definitely a change in the color. So I didn't get to use the pen as often as I wanted to, but the times that I wrote with it, I loved that I can just easily write with it. I don't have to focus too much on the way that I hold the pen on the paper, my position of pen. It doesn't matter if it's this, or even if I tilt it over here, it still writes, which is definitely good. I love that I can easily write with it, and there is enough line variation to make a difference and to make it stand out and not be just like any other nib. The ink is definitely not for me. I think I expected something else, and that's why I'm probably so disappointed. So I think that was it. I started doing 30 inks, 30 days, halfway through the month. So that took away a little bit of this whole writing experience. And I mean, next time I know better. So maybe, I don't even know what I'm going to do in October, but in September, I am going to do 30 inks, 30 days. So I will not have any other inks and pens in use. And then in October, maybe while I'm doing 30 inks, 30 days, I will understand what I want to do moving forward. I think the goal right now is to ink up less pens. We'll see how that works for me. I am so glad that you spent this time with me. I really love talking to you and chatting to you and telling you my experiences with all of the pens that I have. I if you watched my San Francisco pen show video, you know that I have several pens on loan that I'm excited to use and that I purchased some new pens. So I think that's the content that you're going to see coming up in the next 6 months. And yeah, I look forward to that. I hope to see you soon. Until then, bye.